The number one thing is in sales that we've adopted and I teach, no matter who, because I work with businesses, I work with individual coaches, but across the gamut, is we have to define what it means to sell. And he taught me, and I've taken it and kind of stretched it out even more, is that you're in control, but it's the customer's problem that should be at the center point. You must obsess with your customer's problem more than they do. And by obsess, I don't mean like when you're in the sales process talking, but you've got to be constantly thinking about what are problems that our customers have right now? What are problems that are just really impacting them and their well-being and their financial situation? And how can we talk about that organic way? And how can we bring solutions for that? Most people aren't obsessed with customer problems.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Kevin, and today we are joined by Bill Caskey. He is the founder of Caskey Training. He's been a coach for over 35 plus years. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Thanks, Kevin. Good to be here. Thanks for what you do on this podcast, too.
Yeah. One of the things I'm always so curious about, especially with people that have been in the industry for quite a while, is the origin story, the lore. How did you get started with coaching and turn it into a business?
Well, I got out of school and got a job in sales, and I didn't know what I was doing, and it showed. My results were awful, and I job hopped from one job to another, thinking it was the job that was the problem, until one day you wake up and realize you're the problem. And I didn't really know how to sell, and yet I was selling high-ticket Caterpillar equipment and $100,000, $500,000, and I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I did okay because I worked hard, but I had no technique, I had no strategy, I had no principles, that I lived by. And so I did that for about 8 years. And finally, when I hit 30, I realized that if I didn't get help, I was probably going to be an at-leaster the rest of my life and be in the middle of the stack rank. And I played basketball in high school and college, and I was always a high achiever, or at least I thought I was. And for a short white dude, I could jump pretty high. And so I always took achievement seriously, and I just couldn't get sales. And so I started a long journey to understand what selling was, what it wasn't, what's the psychology behind it, and why is it that people don't like the profession? What is there about the profession that causes people to kind of like, oh, I'm not in sales, or no, I don't want to be in sales? And I realized pretty quickly that it had nothing to do with the profession. It had to do with all the stereotypes around the profession. And so I took it upon myself. My mission for the last 30 some years has been to blast all those myths away about what selling is and what we've been taught it is. Let's reinvent it. And let's say, let's have a brand new start of what sales and what selling is. And so that's my mission. It's what I've been on here for the last few years.
What are some of those stereotypes, by the way, that come to mind?
Well, the stereotype of, pushy and pressure, the stereotype of convincing and persuading, that people think that their role as a salesperson, as a coach. I know you have a lot of coaches and creators and trainers and advisors that listen. And there's this temptation to drop into convince and persuade mode, and defend mode, and convince mode. And, here's why you should be buying from me. There's no better way to screw up a sale than start there, is to have the attitude that I'm here to convince somebody to buy from me. Because what happens is you get resistance. There's immediate resistance. People can feel it. You think you're hiding it, but you're really not. People can feel that. So those are a couple stereotypes. And I talk with a lot of younger people because I have a couple of daughters who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s actually now. And this is after living with me and growing up with me and hearing my stuff and hearing the podcast. A couple of them, they work for me, so they kind of understand, but they still have this stereotype, and they still like, I don't want to be in sales. And I always feel like, man, it's the easiest profession in the world. It's easy. Why don't you want easy? But the stereotype, the stronghold runs deep.
How did you kind of start dissolving those beliefs?
Well, I had a coach that I hired. I started a training business when I was 31, 32, because I felt like if I was going to learn the ins and outs of sales and really make it a livelihood and make it a craft, I was going to have some coaching. And so I found a coach just luckily, who I still in contact with today, and he helped me rethink selling. And we can get into some of what he taught me, but he really was the foundation that, that really spurred me on to be able to build something that was different than what everybody else was doing. So it was happenstance. It was just luck. I ran across this guy and he ran across me and we became friends, and then he coached me because he was doing this for a lot of other coaches at the time. And that's, sometimes people come across your path and you look back and like, well, had I not met him, my life wouldn't be the same today.
And so I'm also curious, you said that some of the stuff that he was teaching was a little bit different. What were some of those different approaches?
The number one thing is in sales that we've adopted and I teach, no matter who, because I work with businesses, I work with individual coaches, but across the gamut, is we have to define what it means to sell. And he taught me, and I've taken it and kind of stretched it out even more, is that you're in control, but it's the customer's problem that should be at the center point. You must obsess with your customer's problem more than they do. And by obsess, I don't mean like when you're in the sales process talking, but you've got to be constantly thinking about what are problems that our customers have right now? What are problems that are just really impacting them and their well-being and their financial situation? And how can we talk about that organic way, and how can we bring solutions for that? Most people aren't obsessed with customer problems. They're obsessed with their own products. They're obsessed with how quickly can I make the sale? What do I need to say to make the sale? It's no wonder that salespeople are some of the least respected people out there, because it's always a game. I mean, a lot of sales trainers even talk about the game, but the game that you play on somebody. And I just don't think you need to. So part of that is rewiring the entire buyer-seller dance away from it's up to me to convince them. It's up to them to convince me. It's up to them to convince me they have a problem that they want to solve. If they can't convince me of that, I'm out. There's no reason for us to stay in a buyer-seller relationship. So we flipped the script on traditional selling, and it works. And it takes some courage, takes some training, but once you make that switch, everything gets easier.
I love it. Nothing turns off a buyer more than commission breath, in my opinion.
This morning, I got an email from a client who was sending an email to his prospect who was looking at between them and somebody else, and he had narrowed it down to 2 vendors, and this is a significant deal. And my client had had several meetings with them, and at the last meeting, the guy introduced the fact that he was looking at somebody else. And so my client writes this long email to this guy, and I've only been working with my client for a couple months, so I'll excuse him. He writes this long email, which just what you said, there was commission breath all over it. It was needy, it was desperate, he was attached. Even though he would say things in the email that he was trying to get across that he wasn't attached, but it was just evident. And so I said, man, you know, let's rethink this whole thing. And maybe maybe the customer's best bet is to go with the other vendor. Maybe because he knows him better than he knows you, that's cheaper. So there's a lot of reasons he would go for the other vendor. Why don't you call him and say, look, I think you should go with the other vendor. You like their pricing better. You like the guy. You have a family relationship. I don't even understand why I'm in the mix. I'm not sure why I'm in the game. I'm higher priced. You know, I believe we're going to bring value, but you haven't gotten there yet. So why wouldn't you just go with the other vendor? And he's like, oh man, I don't know if I can do that. It's a big deal. I said, well, this email right here ain't going to get you there. This email's not going to get you there. This email will cause a guy to go the other. So you got nothing to lose. You're down, 7-1 in the 9th inning here. So you got to change the game. And I always talk about changing the game. The game of convincing and persuading should not be the game you're playing. So anyway, that's just an example of that.
That's so beautiful because both parties are thinking about that. And it reminds me of the Chris Voss accusation audit of putting everything out on the table and whatnot and just having conversation about what's not being said. I love that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true because, 2 people come together. There's a buyer and there's a seller. They come together because maybe the buyer has downloaded something from the web or maybe the seller made a cold call, but there's a reason these 2 people have come together. And if you get in the way of the reason, the etheric existential reason that you 2 people have come together, if you get in the way, which salespeople do all the time, they get in the frickin' way. Just get out of the way and allow the customer to tell you what their pains and issues and problems are and how much they're costing them and help them explore alternatives. I've got a client or a prospect right now who I was talking with for a couple of weeks and he went cold. He went, you had it happen before probably. You go crickets, just ghost me. And so I sent him an email and said, hey, I've sent you a couple emails. I'm assuming that you have made another decision to go elsewhere. That's cool. I'm here if you need me, but I'm not going to keep pestering you with my follow-up emails because that's not healthy for anybody. So I just wish you luck. If you want to chat, I'm fine, but you should go do what you want to do. He called me back about an hour later and he said, Bill, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I have been sick for 5 days. I've got some kind of plague, some kind of COVID. I don't know what it was. And he says, I apologize. We're going to do this. Let's set a time. In fact, we're meeting right after our call. Let's set a time and get this done. Now, he was sick, so I didn't know that because he didn't email me back and say, hey, need to back off this. I got to get well. But had I not sent that email, I don't know what he might have just forgotten about me. So, but the tone of the email is, I want what's best for you. That's what I always tell my clients. I want what's best for you. If that means working with me, let's work together and let's have some fun and get it done. If what's best for you think is going to somebody else who does what I do, and maybe you're going to pay more, maybe less, you got to do what you want to do. And I mean that. I'm not saying that so that he comes back and says, oh, well, I like your cut of your jib, Bill. I think I'll work with you. I'm not doing it for that reason. I really do want the best. Now, there was a time in my life where I couldn't say that. But at my age, I've collected a few shekels. I'm good. I don't need the business. But that just attracts more people to you because you're not in need. You're not desperate. And so if I can teach anything to anybody who's listening, it's lose the desperation. It's not a good look on you. It doesn't work. It actually forces people away. So I'm rambling. I'll let you go. That's my answer.
I love it because, I'm not sure if you know, but I've been head of sales and I study a lot of sales and stuff too. And I see so many similarities between the top sales people or more so advisors that I look at, right? And I love your vibe of a trusted advisor. Your email reminds me of this guy named Blair Enns, and he has a magic email and stuff like that. Very similar, very, very similar frame and all that too. I love that.
I think there's a coaching, and I got to be careful here because I know you have a lot of clients or a lot of listeners who are coaches, but I think you have to be really careful in the sales coaching business because there's a lot of people who love the move of the email. Hey, let's send them the breakup email. I know that's not what you're saying, but I hear a lot of that. Well, let's just send the breakup email. Like, no, the breakup email is a move. It's a move to get the customer to call you back and do business with you. There's no moves in my business. I really don't care if they work with me or not. If they want to work with me, I am all in on them. I don't believe in the move and the manipulation, and there's a lot of that crap out there. And I know that's not what you're talking about, but I would say if you find yourself doing something because you think it's going to elicit a certain response, that's a move. Don't make moves on people. They sniff it out a mile away.
You know what's really interesting, and then we'll move on to the next question, but it's really interesting because I notice a lot of similarities between sales and the dating worlds, right? Where you have these manipulative pickup artists using tactics and manipulation tactics. And then there's the other route of people just being not desperate. I don't know what the word might be, centered. I can't think of a better adjective for it, but it feels a way more authentic versus manipulating someone into a deal or a date in this case.
No, I think it is the same. I think it's exactly the same. And so when you think about dating or sales, the first question is, how are you bringing value to the other person? Are you bringing any value, or is the only value you're bringing if they decide to pay you money and then you'll deliver the value? I think we live in a world today where you've got to be delivering value up front.
That's right.
And you don't have to deliver all of it, but you have to have something. Like I do a podcast every week, and I've got 2 podcasts actually, weekly podcasts. And I feel like every week we're delivering value. We're not, some of these podcasts, they sit around and talk about stuff, and after 10 minutes, you're like, are you going to get to the point, or is this going to be just babbling between 2 humans? I believe that you have to bring value, whether it's a video or whether it's a podcast like this. And hopefully we're bringing value today to people. Yeah. But if you only expect the customer to believe you, if you're going to bring value only after you get paid, one of your competitors is bringing value up front before they get paid. And that's who they're going to choose, because that's reciprocal and there's a trust. There's more of a trust there, as you said.
I do want to touch upon something. You mentioned that you work with a lot of businesses and coaches, and you mentioned that you have this like weekly podcast where you deliver value to the listeners. Let's talk about marketing. What kind of marketing are you doing right now? Is that your main marketing strategy at the moment?
Yeah, podcasting is it has been for years, our main marketing strategy. Almost all clients that come and work with me or they bring me in to work with their team came from a podcast. Or they come to a webinar or they get on my email list and then eventually things get forced into the podcast. So podcasting to me is the holy grail of marketing today, especially for coaches. It's the holy grail. It's cheap. If you're good, you got to get good at it. You got to have good guests. Well, I don't know if this is present company, you better have good guests. I'm not sure if I'm one, but you have to have good guests. You have to have something to say. You have to be interesting. You have to get in, get out. Don't belabor things. But if you do that, if you're a coach or a creator of any kind and you don't have a podcast, you're missing a key ingredient of marketing. And I don't think it needs to be Joe Rogan-esque. I don't think it needs to be 10 million people. It could be 100 of the right people. And if you can make that work, then podcasting is a great marketing tool. We also do webinars. Got one tomorrow, in fact, that we do. We try to do at least one a month. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with webinars. Sometimes they're awesome and sometimes they fall flat. It used to be that you had 200 people sign up for a webinar and 150 would come. Now you're lucky to get 40 or 50, 20%, 25%. And even though it infuriates me, I think, well, I sign up for a lot of webinars that I end up not attending. So, I'm a hypocrite if I put you down on it.
I wanted to actually piggyback on the webinars because you mentioned you have a love-hate with webinars. And so how do you make your webinars super valuable and not like cookie cutter like the other ones?
Well, the format is really just telling my story, which you heard a little bit of today when we started, sharing the observations that I make in the marketplace. So I feel like I have a luxury box overseeing what's happening in sales and marketing today that most people don't have because I work with so many companies and I have this podcast and I get a lot of questions. So I always start with observing. Here's my 5 observations. And those observations are typically painful observations. Like one observation I make is that most companies don't have a lead generation system that puts people in the pipeline. And so they rely on referrals or they rely on just happening to show up at Starbucks when a person who's a prospect shows up there. And I think if you're not generating leads and having a systematic way to do that, and so that's one of the observations I make. I make these observations and I go into action. I say, look, here's one thing you can do. I don't overwhelm them. I don't tell them there's 20 things you can do. I say, here's one thing you can do for each of these observations. If any of these clicked with you and you feel that it would make sense for us to have a conversation, here's what typically happens next. I will send you an email. We'll get on a call. Here's what happens on that call. If you decide to work with me, here's what working with me looks like. So it's all very straightforward. I don't do a lot of clever, stack 1,000 bonuses. I don't do that crap. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't work, but yeah. What's that?
I hate that. Like ever since ClickFunnels made it like the value stacking, the value offer stack, it's just too much noise. I feel like these days buyers are a lot more nuanced, they're a lot more sophisticated, and they see past those manipulation tactics and they don't appreciate it. No one likes it. Even if you're a sophisticated buyer, no one likes going through the value stack. I never hear anybody like, hey, I love that process,
No,
At least that's my opinion.
In fact, one thing that I do up front, and I don't know if this is right or not, but it seems to work for me, if there's a price to something, like tomorrow I'm doing a webinar for a book that I wrote called 12 Bold Moves. Position this webinar as an implementation webinar. So anybody who has downloaded the book, bought the book, downloaded the audio, they get invited to this. So we got about, 50, 80 people coming. So on the back end, I'm selling a $97 a month program called Insider. And it's where I train this group for an hour and a half every month, talking about a specific topic that is counterintuitive. This is new stuff you're not going to hear anywhere else. And so I'm going to make that pitch at the end. But I'm going to start tomorrow with, I recommend you do this if you're a coach. Forget about the stacking of bonuses and say, look, at the end of today, I'm going to make you an offer and it's going to be X amount of dollars. And the reason I tell you that is because if it were me, I don't want to be sitting here knowing there's an offer coming and not knowing if it's 30,000 or 50,000 or what it is. I'm just going to tell you right up front. You have to decide then throughout this next hour whether it's worth it or not. You may decide it is, you may decide it's not. That to me is a more human way to run webinars where you're promoting something at the end. If you're just promoting a booked call, like an appointment, then you can say that too. At the end, you'll get a chance to get on my calendar. You may want to, you may not. I think that's the future. People have been through the whole bonus stacking to where they're not open to that.
I've actually had the same approach where like I have a minimum level engagement. We talk about pricing very early. I learned that from Blair Enns and my friend Christo a lot. And so it's really interesting seeing your approach and how you approach it. I love the wording that you use too, like that you just provided. You know, in sales, I think a lot of people are taught to always reveal that and don't reveal pricing. Where do you feel like that came from? What are the origins of that?
That's funny because we're doing one of our insider topic for next Friday is on that very topic. When do you have the money conversation? How do you have it? When don't you have it? You know, there's several different scenarios. I won't get into that. But where did it come from? I think we're just naturally reluctant to talk about money. And yet the customer knows that if they're going to buy, it's going to be money. We know that if we're going to provide a solution, there's going to have to be some money there. I don't know why, but we're all guilty of it, especially if the customer thinks it's going to be $500 and it's $50,000 and you know that up front, you're going to have some anxiety about it. And so one of the things that I will be talking about next Friday is, here's the rule. Always be willing to talk about money. Always be willing to do it. If the customer up front says, well, how much does this cost? I'll talk about money. I won't talk about specifics about money, but I'll talk generic because I may not know how much it costs early in the process. I mean, if you're getting ready to consult with somebody on YouTube or marketing and you don't know what they're trying to accomplish, how in the world can you price it? The idea here is to never avoid the money conversation. Just never avoid it. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Now, it's better if you can control when that happens, but I would never leave it until the end. Never.
It just feels like, of course, you do bring up a good point where, you know, like, how do you know, like, how much is something going to cost if you're not even clear about the problem quite yet?
That's right. That, of all the things that we talk about around money, is the critical ingredient. Because if you don't understand the cost of the problem or the cost of not solving the problem, and you don't know what it's going to cost the next 5 years if they decide. I got a guy that I talked to here about a month ago. He's got a $5 million business. He wants to get to 20 million in the next 3 years. I talked to him 5 years ago, and guess what? He was a $5 million company wanting to get to 20 million. So here we are, fast forward to today, he still hasn't done it. And now he wants to bring me in to fix this problem and get more. And I said, Robert, I want to help you. But we sat here 5 years ago or whatever it was, years ago, and talked about this, and you've done nothing with it, so I don't know how committed you are. Once he says, oh no, I'm committed, then we start to understand the cost of the problem. The cost of the problem is $15 million a year. This problem has cost him a lot of money. Now, I'm not saying that I can fix it in 1 year. I can't. I mean, that's a stretch to 5x your business in 1 year. But we can fix it. We can get there. But I think you're right, Kevin. I think we need to be much more focused on the cost of the problem rather than the cost of the solution.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too, because it also reminds me of dating, where someone might bring up a red flag about like money. They might be in a tough situation. And if you just push it on the rug, you're going to have to deal with it at some point in time as well, you know? So might as well talk about it up front.
I don't have any budget for that. I mean, you hear that a lot. I've got $1 million problem. I got a budget for the $1 million I'm losing every day, but I don't have any budget to fix it. Well, that's absurd. That's idiotic. I always say if the CEO of your company had his family kidnapped and the ransom was $10 million, I guarantee you he or she would come up with a way to pay it. But you're constrained by budgets. So you're not the CEO. So now you're looking at the budget and say, well, where's the budget? You're not looking at the cost of the problem. And until you do, I can't make the budget work because you don't have any budget. So why are we even talking?
I do want to ask you something else, Bill, because, you know, there's salespeople, right? And we could talk about sales all day. But there's another element of pricing and offers. And of course, you don't need to give any hard numbers, but like I would love to hear your thoughts about how you go about pricing strategies for offers. Like how do you, because there's so many different ways we can price anchor. We can price anchor to, you know, how much it costs us. Some coaches do hourly, which I never like. Some do value-based pricing.
Yeah.
But like, what have you kind of gravitated to over the years personally for yourself?
Yeah, I think there's a mix there. I mean, if I find that the guy has $1 million a year problem that I think I can fix, I'm not going to charge him based on that. I'm not going to charge him a 500,000 based on that because then I'm charging other people 100 grand. That just doesn't seem fair to me. So I like to have some integrity with pricing. My corporate work is a standard fee, $6,500 a month for 6 months. I work with people. It's only 6 months. Used to do a year at a time. We don't do a year anymore. We do 6 months. And at the end of 6 months, we decide, do we want to continue or not? And I find that 6 months is long enough to make good things happen, but not so long that they get tired of Bill Caskey coming in, because I can wear them out. I can be very tiring. I know it's hard for you to believe, but I can be. My wife would second that. Her words are, do you ever stop talking? So 6 months is the optimum. If they say, I only want to do 3 months, then I might have to charge more during that 3 months. And I might say, okay, we'll do 3. It's going to be a higher fee. But if they say 1 month, I will say, no, we're not going to do anything for 1 month. So that's my corporate work. Now it could go up. It could go up to $7,500 a month. It probably will in 2026 at some point. But 6 months probably won't. It won't go down. It might go up a little bit. And then I have a public program called Insider. It's a $97 a month membership. I show up once a month, and there's about 100 people in that. And I'm going to get that up to hopefully 300 to 400 here in the next year. That's a nice revenue stream because I don't have to babysit anybody. There's no one-on-one coaching. And it's valuable because we do breakout sessions. They get something every week. There's a lot of content there for $97 a month. It's not much, but it's a good value program. But corporations, they don't want to send 12 people to that. They would rather pay $6,000 a month to have me come in and work. Does that help you on the pricing thing?
Yeah, and I just have a follow-up question. How did you come up with $6,000 per month for the corporate clients?
I used to charge less, and I thought it was worth more. I find that the kind of business I work with, if you get up to 10 grand a month, it taxes the system a little bit. So I'm working with, $5 to $100 million companies. I have a $1 billion company that I work with, but that's an anomaly. And based on the time, I have a certain amount of hourly rate that I want to keep to. So that kind of fits into that idea. But yeah, it's more a guess and what the market will bear. I don't get too much pushback. If you're a $20 million company and you've got a $5 million problem, $6,500 a month is nothing. 40 grand for the 6 months, and one sale is probably 30 grand. So it doesn't really take a lot. And I always say that you should be looking at 10x return on this investment, and that's even low. I've got a client who was a CPA firm, and they brought me in a few years ago. We took them from 18 to 32 million, and it cost them about $100,000 to get there. We worked with them for a couple of years, and they still say it was the best investment because $100,000 sounds like a lot of money if you've never bought training before. But when you look at $12 million of extra revenue, it's nothing.
I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Okay, let's go. Let's go. Okay.
Why not charge more? I mean, obviously you don't seem like predatory,
I should.
right?
I should. That's a good question. Maybe this conversation will cause me to bump that fee. What you charge is such a spiritual and emotional, non-physical thing.
Especially when it's your own offers too, versus like other people's offers.
True. And because there's only one of me, I only take 5 corporate clients at a time. So I'm only working with 5 to 6 at one time. So there is a scarcity factor too to that. I don't think I probably capitalize that like I should. And I also don't want to be traveling around the country doing plane flights here and there trying to serve people. I've done that. I love doing that. I'm too old to do that. I don't enjoy taking my shoes off, although I've noticed in the last couple of months that's kind of all gone away. I'm also at a place from a lifestyle standpoint that I don't want 10 clients. I want 5 good ones.
Last few questions. As you reflect on your business, your season of business right now, what are some challenges that you're kind of noticing? Maybe some challenges that people can't see outside looking in.
Well, I think if you look at my age, I'm not going to be doing this forever. I probably have 5 to 7 good years left in me, assuming I stay healthy, which I have been. So I got to figure out, what do I want to do with this thing when I'm done? Do I want to just turn the lights out? I don't have a daughter or son that is interested in taking it. I got 2 daughters, but they have no interest at all. And so I've got to figure out if there's really anything saleable here, or put more in your nest egg and then turn the lights out and say, okay, I'm done. Now, I do think one thing that I would have trouble with is retiring 100%. I love creating audio. I love creating video. I love talking to people like you and brainstorming on ways we can help people become better. So I would miss that. That's not going to go away. I don't know that I'll always have 5 clients and 300 people in a program, and probably not. So I don't know if that's a problem. It's just something I'm aware of and trying to decide, what does that look like, when I finally hang it up. I got enough good years in me. I'm not obsessed with that.
Bill, I wish we could go so much longer. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah,
I
me
had
too,
so many
Kevin.
follow-up questions that I held myself back from asking. But one final last question for you.
Oh.
How can people find you and connect with you?
Well, thank you for the interview. Thank you for having me on and for asking me that. Bill Caskey, Caskey.com. You'll find everything there. I've got a document here that I thought about promoting. You could help me promote it. I'll send you the link to that. It's a document called How to Build Your Personal Brand to Attract Clients. So if you're in the client attraction business of any kind, your personal brand really matters today. We didn't get into that, but this document here will help you come up with a checklist and a guide. So we'll put that in. The podcast is the Bill Caskey Podcast, creatively named. And then I've got YouTube channels and all. But go to billcaskey.com and you can find me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Bill Caskey too. Lots of stuff.
This is actually one of my favorite podcasts this week. I feel like we touched upon so many things, like your ideas on pricing, on what selling is, and it makes me reflect on what are the things that I can improve on, because I love learning from people who have been in this game way longer than me. So I know it's valuable for myself, but I assume it's going to be very valuable for the listeners here. So
Good.
I just want to remind you, Bill, that thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for sharing all the insights on this podcast, and I appreciate the wisdom that you brought today.
Thanks, Kevin. You keep up the good work too. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.